All right. Welcome everyone to our next call, our second call with the CrossFit Invictus team. This one we kind of went through a few different iterations of what we were going to call it. But essentially what we're trying to work on here is the idea of individualizing the group coaching experience, which is, I think, something that starts being talked about at the level one. I remember that. And there was very much that idea of care that you want to bring to each individual, even if you're in a group class model. But I think when you leave the level one, you are so flooded and overwhelmed. And most people are also a little bit newer in their coaching journey that piece gets maybe put to the back burner. And a lot of coaches, when they're newer, start to just survive the experience of the 1 hour class. And maybe they're checking other boxes like, the music and the starting the clock and and maybe they start getting into other details, like they want to know everybody's name, which is a good start. But what we're really going to dig into here is a topic that I think everyone would benefit from, even, a level 4 coach, or translate that out of the CrossFit realm, someone that's been in the strength and conditioning field for, decade plus and been working with all different levels of team. This is still something that we want to constantly be refreshing. And what's cool is that the Invictus team is going to come at it with their unique approach that they do with their program. This isn't like if you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong situation. So no one needs to put up the defenses. It's more about, we're going to share what we've learned. We're going to share what we do, a system that works for our team and that has worked for other teams outside of our gym, because this is something that they actually have reproduced, which is a nice little some credibility there for them. So just going to reintroduce our team that we've got from CrossFit Invictus. We've got Kim, we've got Kirsten, and we've got Fritz. And if you guys want to add another little additional intro to yourselves or to this, otherwise I'm going to kind of hand it off to you to start your chat about individualizing group coaching.
Yeah. I don't think we need to know. I was going to say, I think there's so much to cover in this topic that I'd like to jump right into it if we can.
Let's do it.
If you guys want an intro though, feel free to email us and I'll write you my bio.
Yeah, we've all been coaching for a while and are very passionate about what we do. And I think that that's really the groundwork and foundation for discussing this topic of, okay, hey, how do we individualize the group fitness experience, and why do we do that? Really, the purpose of individualizing, and we're going to use a variety of words, right? Like, words are very powerful, and you're going to hear us throw around a few today, and we can kind of get into the semantics of why we use certain words here. But for the purpose of this talk, right, the purpose of individualizing a program is to better align the day's training with the needs, goals, abilities of every individual that's showing up in your class. And that may sound like, well, like, yeah, standard. But I think that we might be surprised how infrequently that is happening, either because of a lack of ability, a lack of structure, a lack of awareness. It's not because we don't want to serve the individual in front of us. A lot of times it's because we quite literally think, hey, I'm offering group programming. The people that are coming into my class, they didn't sign up for individualized one-on-one program. And I find that there's this gap, right, in the spectrum of when somebody chooses to pursue health and fitness or performance training, there is group fitness on one end, where you kind of like fall into this mold, everybody's doing the same thing, and it with good intentions, right? We're trying as best we can to paint with broad brushstrokes to cover the general needs of the group, right? And the population that's showing up, right? Think like 80-20 principle there. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there is individualized one-on-one training, where you leave the group environment, you're getting the most accurate, hopefully an individualized program that you would need to meet your goals, but that can inherently lead you to miss some of the benefits of group training. And it's often cost prohibitive for many people in the country or the world. And so I would say our perspective is that when you take a mindset of starting to level up your group coaching environment and integrating this idea of, hey, how do I individualize the group training experience for the people that are showing up for me every day? That's our way of starting to bridge that gap. And when you do that, you quite literally help your members become more successful, because the training is tweaked just enough, and it can happen in so many ways that the training becomes a little bit more applicable to them based on their injury history, their needs, their current capabilities, their short and their long-term goals. And when you have successful members, they are satisfied members. And when you have satisfied members, you have greater member retention. So we can kind of like get lost in the weeds of like, well, like, why do I want to do this extra legwork? Because at the end of the day, it comes back to successful members are satisfied members stay with you, they tell their friends. And I say all of this, and I think that we would all agree that as we start to like talk about individualizing the group training environment, I feel like it also really comes from a place of passion and commitment. I can speak for all three of us that we all love and fully buy into the power of group training. Like at my core of cores, I am group training through and through. I love that people can go and get individualized programming, and we offer some of those services at Invictus, but we always strongly encourage any member that's getting individualized programming to still stay plugged in and utilize the power of our group class and our group training environment because of its massive impact. So as we kind of go further into this idea of individualizing the program, I think it's really important to lay out 3 fundamental truths that I'm going to assume everybody on the call and anybody that's listening to would agree on. One would be that group training environments are massively powerful, and they're more than the sum of their individual parts. All right, they can really change people on a physical level, emotional level, psychological level. The second truth would be that everybody's programming. If you're on this call and you get a program from, you write the program, you buy a program, you use our programming, whatever. I'm including us in this category. Your group programming is good, but it is very unlikely to be optimal for every individual that's walking into your class on any given day, for them to meet their short-term, long-term goals, you know, who they are showing up as that day, their capacity, their injury history. And truth number 3 is that members that have agency in their training will learn at a faster rate and progress faster and probably more deeply than members that don't, right? That's learning principle that I think we can all agree on, that regardless of whatever it is we're trying to learn, a craft, a topic, math, science, learning, woodworking, that when we are engaged in the process, and in this case, it's engaged in the process of our physical health, we will develop at a faster rate and a deeper rate when we're involved in the learning process. And in the health and fitness industry in particular, I think we run an environment where people come in to check out rather than to check in. And they are used to being told what to do by the coach, by the whiteboard. And so it's often a unidirectional flow of information rather than a discussion or like a bilateral flow. Yeah. And so really the question pops up then, okay, how do we decrease the gap or increase synchronicity between truth 1 and truth 2, being group training is really powerful, and 2, the needs of the individual still need to be met? And the answer is that you create an environment, a structure, and a skill set that allows and encourages for a certain amount of flex. And that can be a little bit scary for coaches and owners to hear, because when you have flex, it means you are inherently releasing a little bit of control. And then you can have a lot of anxiety or fears pop up around how people will use that flex. And how we bridge that gap between point 1 and point 2 at Invictus is we do it in a 3-fold way. And we're going to primarily talk about the second, but I feel like it's worth noting we approach this in a variety of ways that makes us successful. One, we offer a dual track programming in our group class. And I think CJ Martin is on this call. So CJ, if I butcher the birth of dual track programming, please feel free to unmute. But dual track programming, just so you understand what we're talking about, is when somebody comes in for our CrossFit type class, what's called performance and fitness, they quite literally come in and there are 2 programming tracks written on the board. And this structure was born. We've been doing this since I want to say 2009, 2010, very soon after we launched and opened. It was born out of a need to help our coaches not have to change as much programming to meet the needs of the individuals that were walking in, and quite literally to meet the needs of a larger demographic that was coming into training. And briefly, right, performance track has a different intended stimulus than the fitness track. And you might be hearing me talk and think, well, yeah, this is our RX and our scaled. This is what we do at our gym. And dual track is not RX and scaled. There's enough similarity between the tracks so that they can be effectively run at the same time, right? The same muscle groups, the same movement pattern, the same joints are probably going through range of motion. But what is programmed in terms of load, movement, reps, sets, that will be different so as to elicit a different stimulus aimed at targeting a broader range of member goals.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to change to that?
I would just add that performance track is your classic CrossFit track, and then fitness is derivatives of that, and they run right next to each other time-wise, very similar time domains. I think that's the biggest challenge sometimes, is keeping both tracks working along at the same rate and also warming them up in a way that they are both prepared for their different stuff. Even though it's all posterior chain, like performance track might be snatching, and the fitness track might be doing a snatch grip RDL and shoulder stability drill and plank. So you can warm them up similarly, but there's still some challenges there if you've never done it before. I remember the first time I coached dual track, it was a big challenge. It's a big learning curve.
It is definitely a learning curve. After 8 to 10 years of coaching here, I can't imagine doing it any other way. And now when I drop into a gym, I'm like, where's my options? But that's
It's another conversation.
for another day. But yeah, I would say like fitness track, it's very important to us that people understand fitness track is not a scaled version of the performance track. It is programmed with a certain avatar in mind. And I think it's an avatar that most gyms could recognize and be like, I have that avatar in my gym. It's going to be more like whole body programmed, an upper lower split with a core, fewer sets but higher reps, more time under tension, so that the person that wants a higher metabolic conditioning or muscle endurance or a certain hormonal response stimulus from their training is going to get that. And that's going to be a different stimulus than what you get when you walk in for a performance track, which is, okay, hey, you're doing 10 heavy single snatches.
Higher scale, a lot more rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both tracks are valid and wonderful, but we just have to recognize that people want different things. Okay, so that's one. That structure already helps us to introduce to our community, hey, this is a little bit of a buffet. You need to be involved in the process. What are your goals and how do you want to train? And we're going to help you as a coach understand which track might be more in alignment with achieving your goals or whatever you want to work towards today. The second one that we're going to dig in today is that we foster a culture of customization. And this is a nice, vague, nebulous concept. But basically, the idea of a culture of customization is grounded in the idea that we believe the success of the individual in our class is more important than adherence to the whiteboard. The whiteboard is a starting place, and it is not the law. It's like your chili recipe. It's a good base, and if we can help our individuals understand how to add the toppings they want, how to make small adjustments to the spice level, then they're going to leave the group training experience actually getting the stimulus that they want without feeling like they're just being like a square peg shoved into a round hole. And then the third way that we go about achieving an element of individualizing group training is we offer semi-privates. That's an add-on. It is somebody's leaving the group training, but even then they're getting individual programming that they're sharing it with a group of people. So almost at Invictus, you're never training alone. That's how much we believe in the power of training with others. That was a lot, just wrapped out at you.
Yeah, we better ask some questions on what the memory,
how does this sound to people? Like, what concerns or worries are popping up in your head as we throw out these ideas of allowing individuals to customize a program, if any?
Or do some of you guys feel like you already do this in your gym? And then we'd love to hear if you do it in any other way outside of like dual track programming, customizing within, you know, a whiteboard setting or through semi-privates. Do you have other ideas on how you would individualize group training? Or what's your gut reaction to what we just talked about? Because we've done these talks, Kirsten specifically, in front of other gym members in a live setting. And there's a lot of like, I don't know, that sounds weird. Or like my gut reaction is, sounds like scaling, just a different, like you're just calling it something different.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want to go? Go.
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Danielle.
Danielle.
So when you have, you know, the fitness and the performance, what is the precursor for somebody who says, I want to do whichever one was more like a class or not? Like, I'm just thinking of people that, you know, will be like, oh, I want to go RX. And you're like, the hell you are. But you're like, no, hang on. They're like, no, I want to do it. So I guess my question is just who delegates which one they go into? You or them?
Yeah. I'll approach that question with asking them what they're, like, how does this align? Like, what are you trying to, why do you want to go RX? I'm like, oh, because I think that I can. Okay, well, the time cap is this, and this is the intended stimulus. How do you think you can best approach that? Open-ended question. And sometimes they'll self-select, like, oh, actually, I don't think I could hit this under the time cap, so maybe I'll go a little lighter. Okay, great. How's your form going to be on those power snatches at the end of the third round? I think they're going to be really ugly. Okay, maybe you go a little lighter still so you can maintain your mechanics. Like, these are the conversations you can have. That way they're hitting a workout that satisfies them that day, and also giving them longevity so that they don't break down. You don't want to lose them as a member because they're constantly chasing RX. And then one day their shoulder hurts, and then their back, and then their knee, and then they go find another gym, and they're looking for someone to help them to find longevity. That's the hardest part, because everybody wants to go RX. And unless you start to change the culture so that it's not about chasing the whiteboard, but it's about chasing a stimulus that's going to get you better at living your life the way you want to live it.
And I would add even to that, as far as choosing between like fitness and performance in particular, not just like what weight you're going to use or things like that.
Yes.
A lot of that onus comes to the coaches. So when we're explaining the whiteboard, we're going to say, hey, if you choose performance today, you're a person who's interested in improving your Olympic lifting technique and lifting heavy for whatever reason. Maybe you're looking to compete. Maybe you just like lifting heavy. If you are like, I don't even really like using a barbell, but you still want to get some core work, you want to get some shoulder stability, and you want to work with things, increase muscle size, you want to work on hypertrophy, that sort of training, then you need to be on the fitness side. And so when we're explaining this, hopefully we're creating avatars that people within the class can see themselves in either one. And then I would have individual conversations with people on that, where if I see somebody who's going to snatch and I'm like, there's no way you can't even hold your arm overhead. Why are you holding a barbell over your head? That's when I would go over and say, hey, what are you looking to accomplish today? What's your goal with the snatches? And if they're like, oh, I need to get stronger overhead, then I'm like, hey, go grab some dumbbells and let's work on getting stronger overhead. And because we don't put scores up on the board or things like that, that works for some gyms. It doesn't necessarily work here, but because we don't have scores up on the board and that sort of stuff going on, most of our members are very open to switching it up because they see the path to, hey, I want a stronger overhead. I can explain why a light snatch is not going to get you there, but a heavy dumbbell will. So it does come down to the coach to kind of guide people, but hopefully avatars are being created first before individual conversations are even happening.
And then I have a really just a follow-up question. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Is I have a lot of newer coaches, right? Like a year, maybe less, and they struggle alone with coaching a snatch, let alone having somebody else doing like a snatch grip RDL and then that kind of thing. So do you think that this best applies to coaches that are earlier on in their journey, or somebody who's been coaching for much longer and has the capacity to kind of do that, both things in one?
That's a really good question.
Because I think about my coaches and I'm like, shit, there are two of us that I think maybe, and myself probably not effectively at first, could run two paths in one class. So I just, being that, they are kind of different. I guess it was just I'm thinking of my staff, like as 6 coaches that have 18 months or less of experience at coaching 2 classes a week, would they be able to do that? That's just a question.
I mean, I think that's a wonderful question. I do think it would be a challenge when I would say I only had 2 years of coaching experience when I came to Invictus, and this is the standard here. And I felt like I was dropped into the deep end of a pool, and I wasn't successful at it at first. I mean, like I did a fine job, but I left every day being like, I remember I went home and I told my partner, I was like, dude, we do this thing called dual track and it's insane. Like it's not good. Like, I don't know why they do this. And I'm telling you, within a year, I was like, I'll never run a gym another way because I see how I'm better able to serve the individuals in front of me. And so I would say to that it's a skill, and everyone will not be good at it at first, whether you're inexperienced or experienced, but you actually just learn. It's not a magic skill. There's a formula to it. So you actually start to see the overlap. At first you see 2 distinct things, and then you develop x-ray vision and you realize, oh, these things are actually, there's an 80-20 overlap between these things. When I am teaching a snatch and a barbell warm-up, you are very likely performing a snatch grip RDL as part of your warm-up. You are likely doing an overhead press. So I actually think that it's a system that, while at first challenging, when you can work through it, you will become an exponentially better coach at a faster rate than staying on a single track. And I'm not just saying that to try to be like, everybody should be on dual track. Everybody shouldn't. You could run this. We have plenty of gyms that take our programming and they run them as 2 different classes. They run a performance class and they run a fitness class. The only problem with doing that is that then the person that can only show up at a certain time and they maybe would have chosen the other track, they're out of luck. And so the goal is like, hey, how can we make every hour of the day as open to the idea of serving the individual in front of them? And I bet that even in your classes, whether you run dual track or not, right, we teach plenty of affiliates how to improve their coaching. You need to do some level of customizing because there's probably people in your class that shouldn't be doing the programming as is. Maybe snatch day is not appropriate for them. It's not in alignment with their goals, or it doesn't make sense with where they're at in their capacity right now. So then the question still remains, how are you customizing for that member?
To the avatars, sounds like a good spot.
Yeah, sure.
I think there's one more question first, just make sure we get to
Go ahead, Ferdinand, and then I just had something to add, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I so appreciate this because this is something that I've really been thinking about a lot for the last couple of months. I'm turning 58 soon. A lot of our gym is our masters athletes, and so I've already started. I'm not going to call it a dual path. There's one workout, but there are options within the workout.
Yeah.
So it's all in there, right? And I think, and so we're right at that point where we're going to split this out. And that's one of my big question. It's not a question, but that's one of the real considerations with new coaches, with other coaches, is how do you get people to think about that? And you're constantly trying to get people to put tools in their toolbox so that they can, pull stuff out. And from the last meeting, when people come into your gym and you're like, hey, Joe, how are you doing today? how's your shoulder? We're snatching, and then you go straight into, you know, before you're in class, like, what are you going to do during class today? So you actually get, before class begins, you're already, you know, checking boxes so that people know where they're going to be in class, and you don't have to do that during that 1 hour. And so I think the training of the mindset of how to run that is super important, and it's very, you have to be very tactful. You know, you got to have,
We call it culture.
yeah, you
We
got to
call
have,
it culture of customization for a reason. It's like you're saying, there are so many elements you have to be aware of. And part of it, you know, the last question came up of like, hey, people want to go RX. That's a culture, right? And it exists nowhere but in CrossFit. And like, I'm not anti-RX, I'm not anti like putting RX and scaled up on the board, but just know that if you grew up in CrossFit, that's probably going to be a mindset that you actually just have to be aware of, that people are bringing with you, that what you write on the whiteboard is the law to them. And it's the only thing that they see as valid. So if you're going to stand up there and then go on have individual conversations, changing people's stuff, then like you need to be aware of how do you create buy-in and validity that what they're doing is as valuable as what's written on the whiteboard. So is it that you write 2 tracks? Is it that you write a range of weight suggested, or you say, hey, this should be an RPE effort of X.
Right.
And this comes back to truth number 3. We are trying to build members that have agency. We call them thinking athletes here. That members that have agency, they are willing to engage with you on these conversations because it makes their training more impactful.
yeah, we oftentimes will do weights that are just ABC, like pick a letter, which you know, or something like that. And I think one of the challenges in this is keeping people within in the lane, so that when the open comes around, they're not surprised by like a 50-pound dumbbell or a 35-pound dumbbell. So you're actually like having to put that in front of them, so they don't go like, oh, I want to do the open, and then there's this stuff that comes at them that hasn't been on the board, right? So you have to like, I think one of the challenges is really get people to fine tune what their goals are, and so they don't feel like they missed out when the opportunity comes to really join a big event, you know, like the open. And that's, I think, so that's why at the beginning of the year, we're actually going to approach this differently. And so I've been thinking a lot about this, but I appreciate you bringing it up.
Well, and just to kind of address your like concern on coaching coaches to create this as a culture and things like that, that's where Invictus University came from, is that anytime we hired a new coach, this was a brand new thing for them, and it was hard, and it took a lot of repeating the same exact things over and over and over again to every single new person that came in. And we were like, if we need to repeat this over and over to every single person, regardless of what their experience level is when they come in as a coach, we should put this down and make everybody who becomes a coach at Invictus go through this university. So that's where like all of this information is coming from, is that Invictus University. And that's where all of our coaches have to go through that in order to figure out what we're talking about and why they may have just come from a gym that it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 70, if it's a snatch day, you're snatching, and then it's either barbell or PVC. Like that's it. So it's a different mindset, and it's something that we definitely have to teach everybody that comes in.
Well, it's also having that knowledge. I mean, you kind of do it anyway, right? Because if you're modifying a workout for somebody, you need to know how to, you know, regress a complex movement so that they get the stimulus of the movement.
Totally.
Either way, and then you're just doing that individually for everybody anyway. But if you put up two tracks on the board, that could take care of a lot of that individual, you know, sort of having to improvise, you know, for each individual. So yeah, that's
Exactly.
Good
I saw a
stuff.
comment popped up from CJ. He said to be clear, you can customize a dual track system or a single track system. So whether you have, and it sounds like you're already customized, you're already making changes to satisfy your demographic. And that's great. So just keep traveling down the rabbit hole. And I'll do a shameless plug. If you want to take a course on how to do this, Kirsten created it, and it's really good. And we've all gone through it. And we teach coaches, not just at Invictus, but we teach coaches all around the world. So, yeah, and with that, I have to go.
Wait.
What's your
Kirsten and I will hold down the fort.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you guys will probably touch on this a little bit as you continue on, but just to kind of revisit what Danielle was saying, like I've got a brand new coach coaching for under a year and they can't even manage the basics right now, let alone adding this additional concept. And again, as CJ said, like it doesn't have to literally be a dual track. It can be a single track that involves a high level of customization that is going to really overwhelm a new coach. Say the workout is fight gone bad and you've got to teach and scale 10 movements for the people that want to do more of a performance workout. And then you have to find customizations across, it doesn't literally have to equal 10, right? To make it the more of a fitness track, but right, you're that to me would not be the place you start the new coach on this mindset of customization. You start them off practicing this skill that you guys are going to talk a little bit more about on a more simple program day, you know, a day, maybe a heavy day, maybe where there's a little bit more time for them and not as many movements for them to have to teach and scale. Because that's the thing is if someone picks the performance track, that's not where their journey stops with the coach. They still are going to potentially need to be scaled, right? If they choose, I'm going to do Fran, that doesn't mean they're necessarily doing Fran RX. They just mean they're not doing the fitness program today. They're doing the performance program, but it also might get scaled, right? You guys might be like, you're going to do performance. One day you might get to do Fran RX. You're not yet RX, but you have the ability to do barbell thrusters, or you're going to do a single arm dumbbell thruster, but that's not what fitness is doing. They're doing something different than Fran, you know? So I think it's good to like give
There's
them
so
a
much.
practice simple program instead of just like, you know, now we're doing dual track customization, go for it. Here's fight, you know, here's fight gone bad, go for it.
So
So.
let's do this. Let's do this. Let's stop talking about dual track. That is its own.
No, but what I'm saying is like the idea of getting a new coach in, it doesn't matter if it's dual or individual.
Correct.
Yes.
Both of them, it doesn't matter which program you do. If you are customizing, that is a new skill, like as you said, and that's challenging. So maybe let them practice with a day that is a more like a basic day. It's heavy presses. How would you customize that for someone? And like just let them work that through with you and then let them try it on the floor, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be a learning curve for a new coach.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's dig into like, okay, hey, like, what does customizing mean? Because you can hear it, and I wonder if some of you are thinking it, that like all the examples right now are scales, right? It's scaling, they are regressions. But, and this may sound like semantics, but it's not. And if you are in this industry, you should know that words are very powerful. How you phrase feedback to clients determines whether they take that feedback or not, right? If you're in a relationship, the language you use when you're speaking to your partner determines how they receive that information. So customizing exists on a broad scope in that it can be a progression, it can be a regression, or it can be a straight substitution of movement. And why you would use one or the other is situationally dependent. It could be who's showing up in front of you, it could be their goals, it could be why they need to change. And customizing exists on a spectrum. You could change an implement of how somebody loads, a barbell to a dumbbell to a sandbag. It could be that you're changing a position or a range of motion, where you are placing load or volume, and it could be a change of movement. So, you know, you've got, and we have a bunch of avatars we can work through here, and hopefully I pick some that resonate with like, oh yeah, I got that Sally avatar in my class. But like, okay, hey, what about the postpartum woman who's 12 to 16 weeks pregnant and it's postpartum and it's hinge day or deadlift? That person walks into your class. How are you? And it's a single track day. And you're a coach. I don't care if you are 1 year deep into your journey or 10 years deep in your journey. How are you integrating that member into your class? Are you changing load? Are you changing movement? Are you changing where they position the load around their body? Do you have the skills to like see that and still integrate them? And we can talk through that example if you want. You might have a 50-year-old male who's 60 pounds overweight they say they got bad cranky knees, they have a desk job, they're rather sedentary, and they come in for squat day. What does customizing movement for them mean? And remember, the point of customizing, we have to come back to this, is about maintaining the intended stimulus of the program, stimulus over everything, and helping them align the work for the day with their needs and their goals, right? So there's that magic fixture, right? So maybe back squat with the bar behind that guy doesn't put him in the best load, or maybe his range of motion that he's able to go to is high, right? He's squatting, his range of motion for his squat capacity right now, his hip range of motion is above parallel. So the first customization is to create an environment for people to be like, hey, I only want you to squat as low as your capacity allows for today. Do I eventually want everyone in my class to be able to squat with their hip below the crease of their knee? Yes. But am I going to make it so that when, you know, the workout for part B, whatever, has a bunch of thrusters in it, that I say, hey guys, I need everybody's hip below the crease of the knee, and hold them to that movement standard, even if they actually don't own that range of motion? For me, that is adherence to a whiteboard or movement standard, not adherence to the success of the individual. So like on a really cursory level, like that's first level customization, letting people move to the range of motion that's appropriate for them, and moving the dialogue away from movement. I don't want to say like movement standards, but like rep standards. Like I'm interested to hear, like, especially for the people that are like, hey, I've got a newer coach, right? Like, how do you encourage them or guide them to help the individuals in their class do movement that is in alignment with their current ability, but still challenging, and stay involved in the class? Like, do you create opportunities or invitations for people to go from a back squat to a goblet squat, or a double kettlebell squat, or a sandbag squat, or instead of squatting for the guy that's got bad cranky knees and it really messes up his back, can they do a lunge? Can they do a hip thrust?
Can you do a sled push?
Yeah. Like, are your coaches or your members even used to having invitations like that to create opportunity for that change? Or does that sound really foreign in itself?
Hi guys. I think for us, I love the fact that you call it culture of customization, because that is certainly deep within the box that I coach at. And you're asking about how we do that, especially with the newer coaches. And a lot of it is, you know, when they're shadowing in the beginning or when they're assisting co-coaching, is that they're given the room and the permission to have the conversations with the members, to find out their goals a bit more, to find out their injuries. That our members are also used to this. They're used that the coach comes and does a check-in with them, and not just once, but maybe a couple of times, and not just about giving feedback on the movement, but checking in about what their plan is for the workout and things like that. I think the other thing we do is, and this is what you're talking about, the goals. A lot of our members are often not really aware of their goals, or their goals are so vague that you can't really help them figure out what. So we actually have goal reviews for our members with the coach, where we sit down and we try and make them smart. And then in those goal reviews, it's spoken about, okay, then this means in the lessons, you need to adapt it this way as such. And that in turn is communicated to the coaches. And I think the last thing we do, and it's something that's took a while to change, was that we do put scores on the whiteboard, but they don't have to be scores. They can also be a smiley face or an unhappy face or whatever. Did they get out of the lesson or out of the training what they wanted to? But this has been something that's taken a few years to change. And I completely understand Danielle's concern about coaches who don't have many reps under the belt as such, and don't have the opportunity for many reps under the belt. And I think the advice, Danielle, I would give there is that they have to prepare their lessons in a way where they've thought about, you call them avatars, but they've thought about the different members in their lessons. Okay, they do have the pregnant woman, and they do have somebody recovering from surgery or whatever, and they have to take that extra time to think, okay, what's the workout or the training going to look for that person? So that's my very short feedback.
Yeah.
But I really love that you've called it the culture of customization, because I think that's something that certainly the CrossFit methodology lends itself to. And I think it's something that as coaches, we need to step up and actually live it.
And I would also, that was awesome. Thank you. But I would also say, when you're thinking about those cultures of customization, how are you allowing that member to still be part of the group class? Because that is where I think the magic really happens is, I'm an individual who does not double under. I had a kid and I no longer want to do that. So anytime double unders are on the board, I need to know that whatever I'm doing is within the scope of everyone else. And that I'm not just like, oh, if you're not going to double under, hang out over here and do air squats or like something like that. I'm not going to get the same stimulus. I'm not going to feel like I'm part of the group. I'm off in the corner. I'm doing things by myself. So what I find magic about the culture of customization that we have here is that there might be 15 people in the class and 12 of them are doing something other than what's on the whiteboard.
By a small degree, usually,
Exactly.
very small degree.
But that means that I don't have to feel like the oddball who's not doing single unders or double unders because I don't want, quote unquote, don't want to jump. Then I just feel like I'm like, maybe this isn't the workout day I should be in there for. So instead of that, I know I can go in and I'm still part of the group. It's encouraged that you're asking questions, that you're talking to coaches about what does and doesn't feel good for your body, and that's accepted and encouraged in a class setting, and not just like okay, I know you got this hip thing, go over here. So that I think is the other part to it that doesn't always get said, but keep maintaining the idea that this is a group coaching class, and so everybody needs to be part of that group as well.
Yeah, fair. And thank you so much for sharing like kind of like how it rolls at your gym. You speak really nicely to a concept that we call knowing the athlete and the human, and that as coaches, especially when we talk about coach development, we can get so obsessed with technical knowledge. I need to know the better cue. I need to train my coaching eye. And yes, that goes without saying, we need to develop that technical capacity. But if it is not on top of a very strong foundation of our human skills of knowing who am I seeing, how do they like to learn, what do they actually want to achieve, how do they feel when they step into this environment, what is their self-talk like, are they a visual learner, an auditory learner, a kinesthetic learner, that like without that knowledge, how I coach this athlete could be completely lost. My technical skills could be rendered far less effective and impactful. And so I think it's lovely to hear you say that your coaches, especially your newer ones, receive the time and the encouragement to get to know your members as humans and athletes first. Armed with that knowledge of knowing members as humans and athletes, I'm just going to keep thinking here, and if you want to interrupt again, it means that coaches can probably use broad sweeping language in their whiteboard briefs to help create invitations for individuals to customize and decrease the amount of individual conversations they need to have afterwards. So when we do a whiteboard brief, right, and I have a certain workout, and it could be right, like fight gone bad, like it could be something that seems kind of scary and daunting because there's a lot of movements, and this is going to sound bad, but I feel like I can't remember all the movements in fight gone bad, but like it would be easy to say, okay, hey, like if rowing isn't gonna like sit well with you today, or like you might just think in your head like, hey, there's a person that I know they don't want to row, or there's a couple people, or rowing showed up in the programming yesterday, why did it show up again today? You might be like, hey, if rowing is in alignment with what you want, then replace this row with a salt bike or a double under. Or you might even be like, hey, if there is an opportunity that you want to inject some other skill movement, right? Like maybe as a coach, you're seeing, man, we've had a lot of repeat in some of these movement patterns this week. It would be so cool. I know there's a lot of people that they keep saying there's not enough opportunity to work on their double unders or to work on their kipping pull-ups. Like, I don't have to write on the whiteboard like, oh, okay, change wall balls to pull-ups. But what if I just gave an invitation where I was like, hey, if you want to take that non-structural component today and put in a skill component that you really want to work on today, it could be double unders, pull-ups, ring muscle ups, come talk to me. And I'll make sure that you put in a volume of work or replace it in a certain appropriate station that we can keep the flow of work going today. That's just an invitation for customization. And once you start planting those seeds, it won't happen immediately. At first, no one will take you up on the offer to customize. But now I have people come up to me and they say, Coach, I know I told you that my goal was I want to get better at my double unders. Is there a place that I can put this in today? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. Or if I say, hey, no, like if I get the sense that they're actually just trying to skirt doing the thing that they really don't want to do, I'll have an honest conversation back with them. Be like, hey, like, what's the reason that you want to work on this? Haven't you already gotten that work in this week? And if they say yes, I'll be like, okay, is the bike station feeling kind of daunting? Yep. Okay, today's the day that we do the thing we don't want to do. Does that question sound good?
We can, we do have like 10 minutes left. I'd love to like open it up for questions, but also if there aren't any questions, happy to go over some avatars and how they might show up in a gym setting and what we might typically do with them. But whatever is going to be most valuable for everybody on the call.
If nobody has a question, I think for my brain, because I think language wise, I do this. I just call it scaling instead of customizing. So I think just trying to wrap my brain around it, not necessarily the person. Although you did say 12 weeks pregnant or 12 weeks postpartum and pregnant, and I about shit myself because I was like, could you imagine being that? But not necessarily understanding who the avatar is, because I understand the avatar. I'm trying to wrap my head around what does it look like in a class setting of like, here's fitness and here's performance, and maybe not fight gone bad, of course, right? And maybe not like a heavy thruster day either, but like something kind of in the middle. Like, what would that look like coming from Invictus?
Okay, like, well, we can talk about like a squat day, like programming wise, it would be like, okay, let's say we're in the middle of a squat cycle, performance track written on one side of the board, every 2 minutes for 12 minutes, you're doing back squat, 2 to 3 reps, building to a heavy double by the end, with suggested guidance on percentage load. And we all know, okay, hey, like that's only 12 minutes of squats, but in reality, it's meant to be heavy. So they're getting probably 6 to 8 minutes of build-up time before they even getting into their work. So in our head, we're like, okay, that's about 18 minutes of strength work for performance track. On the fitness track of the board, probably a typical example might be, hey, you're going to be doing 3 sets, you're on a 90-second interval. Station 1 is back squat times 8 to 10 reps at a 3-second negative, a 1-second hold, speed back up. Second station is going to be strict bodyweight pull-ups, like some kind of upper body pulling. It could be a reverse, bend over reverse fly, some kind of upper body movement. And then third station might be a side plank, farmer's carry, something like that, something core or whatever. But it's usually, it might even be something like mobility oriented. It could be, hey, you're doing like some posterior shoulder work, some bat wings, some snow angels, something to like target like a mobility demand that we feel is a common deficit for the general population. And if you work, sorry, what were you saying?
Oh no, I was gonna say, so you have two separate clocks. You have one on the 90 seconds and you have one on the 2 minutes.
No,
we just assume that everyone can do their own. So we just go 10 seconds and then the clock goes. So if you're on the 90-second clock, you're going to change stations every 90, but it's not going to like count down for you. And then if you're on the back squat station, you're just going. And then every 2 minutes I go again.
Usually, I'm pretty lax about the clock, but I'll be like, hey, right, 3, 2, 1, we're all starting now. I'm going to start the clock for the fitness track, but I'm going to tell performance track, hey, you guys are in your warm-up sets right now. And when it gets to the 8-minute mark, I'm going to turn the music down and be like, hey, performance, you need to be getting into your first working set right now, and you're going every 2 minutes.
Full disclosure, I didn't know how to set like time bands on the clock until like 2 weeks ago. I've been coaching for 14 years, so. But
that doesn't speak to our capacity as coaches. You know?
But I just have never used like a countdown system because our members know 90 seconds and can do math for the most part. So yes. But the interaction between the two, you're squatting in both sides. It's whether you want to build to a heavy, which for me, I'm a 43-year-old female who, you know, had a very competitive youth. And I don't ever need to squat heavy again. Like I can squat to 70 or 80%, but I never need to improve my one rep max, at least as far as my goals are concerned. So I would choose a fitness track where I'm still squatting and I'm getting a lot of volume of squatting, 8 to 10 reps at a 3-second tempo. That's going to be a ton of hypertrophy and things like that. But that's going to be my track because I don't care about a one rep max ever. Someone else, 20-year-old who's in the gym looking to compete and, you know, be competitive, then yeah, that's going to be his track, is the performance, because he wants to lift heavy. He wants to see what his one rep max is. He wants to beat that one rep max every time. So, so it's just different goals. I'm in here for general health and fitness and playing with my 4-year-olds. They're in for like, I want to compete someday kind of thing.
Yeah, they're both valid. They truly are aimed at eliciting a different intended stimulus. And I think like that's the most important thing for people to realize, that it's not a regression to change sets, volume, loads. You're asking, what does the program want? So, and I think Drew from Invictus DC just mentioned he has a clock that can run 2 intervals. So there is technology out there that does these amazing things, but
I'm impressed, Drew. We're doing
one of the coaches, Coach Sam at our Invictus DC location, she once put it to me when we were talking about this topic of, okay, hey, really embracing the idea of customizing programming is about this Venn diagram. And on one side of the Venn diagram, you have what the workout wants from you. And that is, in its essence, the intended stimulus that the program designer had in mind. And note that that is someone sitting somewhere else. They might not even be the owner of your gym, looking at a spreadsheet, and when they write that program, they have an avatar in mind. They are writing a program that they think is going to be pretty good for a certain avatar. And that, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, they're probably doing a pretty good job, but just know they don't know the humans that are in your gym. They don't know the individuals. And then on the other side of the Venn diagram, there's what you, the member, want from your workout. And that could be, well, what are you trying to work towards in your goals? It could be, how do you feel today? Oh, okay, like I just found out that I got fired from my job. I don't feel great. And maybe I don't want to do one rep max snatch day. Maybe I want to come in and I want to do like X, Y, or Z differently. Our goal in embracing the idea like, okay, a culture of customization is to bring as much overlap into that Venn diagram as possible. So it's simply embracing invitations to help people get what they want out of the program. And it can be such small ways. I mean, it's like I said, right? It can be, hey, this is pressing day. And if you know a large percentage of your audience or your population has limited thoracic mobility, a barbell press actually doesn't put them in the best position for their mobility, their current mobility demands. Should they improve their mobility? Absolutely. But in the moment, today, is there a better way to help them build overhead strength? Possibly. It could be, hey, pick up a dumbbell and on a unilateral press, I can get rotation through my thoracic spine in addition to extension of my thoracic spine. And now I can build overhead strength. I can continue to build it rather than pressing a PVC, but I can do it in a way that allows me to be in a more optimal position, right? That would be an example of a really basic customization of just changing the implement. And I feel like that comes back to the skill of coaches to know what is the intended stimulus to build upper body strength. What are the needs and demands of the members in front of me? Ooh, limited mobility. Okay, what's the best way for me to bridge this gap?
Can I add one thing real quick on that?
Do
I think I think it's really important to understand the connotation of scaling versus customization, which is, we started this years ago, right? But if you have a really capable athlete who is, using Katie or Kim, right? Very competitive. I have no doubt they could do a 1 rep max back squat, right? I have no doubt they could do kipping pull-ups. It's not that they can't do it. It's that they're looking for a totally different stimulus. That's not scaling, right? That is actually just changing movement, doing all that. I think that's the important thing when we talk about these customizations is that the minute we use the word scaling, you put into somebody that has a more competitive mindset and a bit of an ego, right? And not in a bad way, but all of us do. Like, I don't want to say, oh, I can't do the movement on the board, so I'm going to do something lesser. If it's a 1 rep max back squat, I might just choose to do 8 reps because I'm not trying to, light up my central nervous system and go back to the days that I used to do that. Right. And so I think even the language alone gets us to a better place with the members.
Everyone wants to do the thing. And if you tell people it's a scaled option, then you're technically not doing the thing. And so then you feel bad about yourself. It's not good. But if I'm customizing, then I'm just doing what I need to do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, CJ. Yeah, I even feel a little bit bad in that I think a lot of the examples we talked about today are examples of, okay, hey, I'm missing some requisite capacity, and that was the basis of our customization. I mean, we have tons of people in here, right? Think about, and maybe some of you do too, of having maybe your younger members that want to go into a tactical profession. They want to be law enforcement, they want to be firefighters, they want to go into the military. We get tons of spec op candidates coming in here. And we highly encourage them to stay in the group training environment because that is what they're going to have to go through when they go through their selection process. But a lot of times we will help proactively customize for them because they have the capacity to probably do 80 to 90% of what we're asking them to do, but the needs and the demands of their job and their sport might differ, right? So the guys that are coming in, they want to do buds. We rarely put a barbell in their hands unless it's a very specific focused stimulus we're looking for, because they're going to have to be used to doing unilateral work, doing odd object work. Having the heaviest 1 rep max back squat actually isn't necessarily a demand of the job. Like that stimulus isn't going to carry over for them. They need to have muscle endurance, hypertrophy, aerobic capacity out the wazoo. So if I want them to train with a group, I want to make sure that they are still maybe making adjustments so that the stimulus is more in alignment with what they need to meet their goal. And I think that that's probably an avatar that I imagine a lot of people are getting in their CrossFit gym of like, okay, do I need to take the time to teach this person that wants to go into a tactical field necessarily like the skill or technical demands of a snatch? Or do I just need to build them a really strong posterior chain? Do I need to build them a really strong midline? And do they need to be able to just do grunt work for days? And you want to decide, okay, hey, like how much time do I spend in either field? That was a good example. I know we're probably getting close to when people need to go. So if anybody wants to jump on and ask a question, work through a specific example, we're happy to stay on and talk through that.
We're also happy if anybody has like questions and they don't want to ask it in front of the group. I think Katie is going to send out like our emails. There's also a ton of information regarding our Invictus University and our affiliate programming with that dual track and all of that sort of stuff that I think she's going to send out. So feel free to like ask us questions, even if it's not in this in front of everybody moment. As you can see, we're pretty passionate about this topic in particular, but also just like working with other coaches and kind of elevating the whole game. So so hopefully that resonates with you. And then like, yeah, come on, give us some questions. Let's start some discussions and hopefully get some more of this sort of talk happening in more gyms.
Yeah, hopefully everyone was inspired to either continue if you already are sort of doing this in your gym or in your classes that you're coaching. And if you are maybe one of the more experienced coaches at your gym as the affiliate owner, really working on a plan to educate your trainers on how to do this, and, you know, starting from the top about making sure the culture fits what you want it to be, and getting them on board, because your coaches really are the ones that are going to spread that culture. So making sure they understand the whys behind it, and really that could be your main focus really this next year, is just really creating some focus on who do we want to be as a gym, and how do we want to serve our members, and how is that going to ultimately trickle down to helping the business as well. Not only the members, but it'll actually help the business be healthier and happier. So really appreciate you guys coming on. I'm going to upload this and then I'll send the email out with the link, because we had some people that did sign up for the call that didn't make it. So I'll make sure everybody there gets it. But yeah, and then that will include your guys' resources and emails as well.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us and letting us share what we're passionate about, and also sharing great questions and engagement as well.
And being open to the topic in general. It's a hard thing to wrap your brain around. It might be different than what you typically do, but the fact that you guys are on the call and listening and hopefully taking some of it to heart is awesome. That's great to see.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you all for being here. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.